When the voice and the vision on the inside becomes louder than the voices and opinions on the outside, that's when you begun mastering your life. So at that point, that's what happened. The inner guidance was, the inner voice was so strong. I don't even know if it was the voice. It was just like, this is what has to be done, that I just couldn't postpone it or ignore it anymore.
Welcome to The Deep Coach, the podcast where we explore the transformational journeys that shape us and that propel us to change the world. I'm your host, Jonathan Ermida, and in each episode, we sit down with those who have journeyed into the depths of spiritual transformation and who are now reshaping the world through their presence and their work. In listening to these incredible human beings, you'll find insight, inspiration, and practical tools to support your journey as a coach and as a human being. My guest today is Nithya Shanti. Nithya is a former Buddhist monk and an internationally respected spiritual teacher, writer, and educator committed to sharing practical wisdom teachings for happiness and enlightenment with people around the world. Our conversation today gets into his story, why he decided to leave a corporate career and become a Buddhist monk, why he then decided 6 years later to leave his robes behind and come back into the world to teach. We talk about what that transition was like, from having zero money and committing to living a celibate life, to the process of exchanging his time for money and eventually marrying his current wife. We dance on the core of his teachings and how the long journey of transformation ultimately brings you to the truth of the here and now. This is a profound conversation, and I'm excited to share it with you. Enjoy. Nithya, it is so great to have you on here in this episode. I'm excited to dive in. We normally start these episodes with trying to understand the context of who you were prior to the onset of your transformational journey. But your story is quite unique in that there were a couple of key points. There was a point when you were in corporate work and then became a Buddhist monk. There was a point where you got into meditation at the age of 16. You could say that your father's passing, the alternative school that you went. What is the context that we need to know about you, Nithya, of who you were prior to these key moments in your life and how they shaped?
So first of all, thank you, Jonathan, for having me on the podcast, and happy to have this conversation with you. I want to actually start by my very idea of transformation has transformed in a sense over the years. And so while we can, for the purpose of this podcast, use the word transformation, I'm more and more skeptical about how much I have transformed. Have I transformed? What has been the transformation? Is there a need to transform? The assumptions I've had about how I needed to be, who I needed to become, a lot of that has, maybe that's been the transformation. The transformation around my ideas around transformation. But yes, the things you mentioned, definitely those were points where, if nothing else, the identity, my assumption of who I thought I was, those experiences shook that identity. My father passed away when I was about 7 years old. And suddenly, like someone, actually, people say things casually and they have an impact on you. Someone just casually whispered into my ear, you're the man of the house. I was 7 years old. And someone said, now you're the man. And something, it's okay, I'm the man of the house. What does it mean now? So somehow childhood in a way, in some sense ended because I felt I shouldn't trouble my mother. I should be responsible. I should always look after my younger brother and my mother. And so that was definitely one surprise when my father just passed away. He had a heart condition that didn't seem that serious, but it became serious and he passed away. And then trying to figure out who I was through somehow my mother moved around. So I went to many different schools. So most people probably go to a few schools in their life. I went to like 6 or 7 schools in my entire, schooling. So as a result of that was different schools, different kinds of people, expectations from what is, wanted from you in different school systems. So all of that led to a real kind of upheaval, trying to figure out who am I? Do I fit in? Do I not fit in? Sometimes in some schools and contexts, I felt very confident and felt that, I can do this. In some places, I felt completely out of my depth. And of course, later on, we'll talk about that, the journey of, I became a monk for a while and, left the conventional job and did those things. So I think each of these, and of course, then leaving that and coming back, it has been a questioning of the identity, questioning of who I assume I am, what I think it's all about. So that's been the transformation, and perhaps continues to be the transformation. I don't think there's any end point to it.
Yeah. Who did you assume yourself to be between the ages of 16 and when you entered into corporate life? Because, the corporate pathway is a very particular pathway, and you
Yes.
chose to go in through that. And I'm curious, what were you thinking? What were you aiming towards in choosing that path?
The funny thing is, I wanted to become a monk right after high school, actually, because I'd already begun this meditative journey at the age of 16, 17. And I had a school teacher who had gone and become a monk in Sri Lanka. And he came back after 8 years. And I just love, he just had, I really felt a shift in his being. He was so relaxed. He used to be quite a uptight guy, with very judgmental. But when he came back after those 8 years to India and I hung out with him, I just loved, he was like a glowing person. I just loved his company. And it almost like he just casually would say things that would just make me rethink so many assumptions I had about myself and life. So even before, getting into college and doing my MBA and corporate world, already the seed had been planted. And if I'm honest, somehow, I think in India, this is called sanskaras. We come with these latent predispositions. In my case, I remember even at the age of 4 or 5, 4 years or 5 years, I would pretend, like sit in meditation pose, close my eyes. Like we have these pictures of rishis and sages in India who kind of close their eyes and meditating in the forest. I would somehow role play that kind of stuff. So I don't know where this is coming from. If I picked that up from some, comic book, we had these Indian comics which have the mythologies, Amar Chitra Katha they're called, and they have in a comic form the Indian mythologies and saints. Maybe that influenced me, but who knows? So somehow this inclination, this proclivity. We once went to Rishikesh on a school trip, and we were hiking in the mountains, and I saw a small cave, and I was magnetically drawn to that cave. And there was nobody in the cave, but I saw a simple blanket. I saw a few books. I saw some, prayer beads. And I said, wow, this is life. It's so simple. All you need is a place to sleep. All you need is a few books for your intellectual stuff, a little bit of food perhaps. And this is this. And somehow I didn't feel like leaving that place. So these are little incidents, which even before, getting into all of this, I was already somehow there was a predisposition, you could say, towards these things. But in my case, I somehow ended up going to college, ended up doing an MBA. I had teachers who said, "Don't be in a rush. Slow down. I know you want this. I know you want to, but rushing it will only make you later on. If for whatever reason later on you change your mind, you will then have the sense of, I wish I had completed my education, whatever, fill in the blanks." So even though I was very drawn to that, I somehow listened to them, and I did go ahead and do the usual, in the US you call it undergraduate, graduate. So I did those programs, and I also worked in the corporate world for maybe less than 6 months. But it became very clear to me that this is not my path, right? This is somehow, it was just so clear to me that, so it was not really coming so much from ambition. It was mostly coming from a sense of, okay, that's what I'm expected to do. That's what everyone's saying is the right thing to do. But at a certain point, it became so strong. It's like, it doesn't matter now. I'm not going to wait anymore. There's a lovely quote I read around that time. When the voice and the vision on the inside becomes louder than the voices and opinions on the outside, that's when you've begun mastering your life. So at that point, that's what happened. The inner guidance the inner voice was so strong. I don't even know if it was the voice. It was just like, this is what has to be done, that I just couldn't postpone it or ignore it anymore.
What did those around you that knew you, what did they say? How did they react?
Some were not surprised because they had seen my interest in philosophy and, these kind of deeper conversations. So I remember in school, I don't know how you do it in the US, but in India, sometimes we give nicknames to every student. So my classmates nicknamed me Swami Harshananda. My name back then was Harsh, before Nithya, it was Harsh. So they nicknamed me Swami Harshananda. So already in school, they were seeing this kind of proclivity towards these kind of things. So that was one. So I usually friends and acquaintances were usually quite happy. My family was not happy. They found this to be a very strange decision to want to leave my corporate career, and And even if they said, okay, take another job or, try something, what is this monk stuff? Like they just couldn't wrap their heads around. They had seen me be interested in meditation and things, but they never thought it'll go to the extent of wanting to become a monk. So it was a lot of surprise, and I would even say disappointment. And definitely there was some drama. There was a few months of a lot of discussions and sadness. But somehow, I don't know how to explain it, but there was a kind of, I felt like, I don't know if it's stubbornness. Stubbornness seems like an egoic response. It was just a sense of absolute clarity that I have to do this. I have done my best to listen to, parents. I've done my best to, be reasonably good at school, college, whatever. I've done that. I've done what you expected me to do until this point. But now at this point, I need to be answerable to myself, not to you.
Yes.
So it was just a quiet sense of, I need to do this. It's possible I may not like it. It's possible I will change my mind, but I need to try it. And if I don't do it, then I'll always have a sense of regret.
What was your experience like in the first couple of years of being a monk?
I loved it. In fact, I really liked my monk life. I have no regrets about my monk life. When I first got there, I felt I was living a dream. I would literally wake up in the morning and pinch myself. Is it really happening or am I dreaming? I mean, it's so beautiful. Living in a beautiful monastery. My first monastery was about 25 acres. Later on, I went to a 5,000-acre monastery. The entire village feeds you. You walk to the village to get your food. You have a huge library of books. You have companions who are very sincere, who have dedicated themselves to something that they believe in. I said, wow, this is a life. Simple living, high thinking, whatever you want to call it. Eating once a day, doing your duties, meditating, being in touch with the teachings. I was just in. It was, of course, it's not that it was always easy. You have your own mind to contend with. But in terms of the opportunity, I felt so blessed. I was so grateful there.
And your relationship to your inner world, to outwardly ambitions, how did you notice that shifting?
I think it shifted to inner ambition, right? It went from maybe I was ambitious. There was a point when I was ambitious. I wanted to be a fashion designer for some reason. I had a friend who was somehow he inspired me. I said, that's where the money is and that's where the women are. I want to be a fashion designer. And somehow I wanted to be a fashion designer, but somehow when I got introduced to meditation at the age of 16 or 17, it shifted. Somehow my consciousness shifted and I realized it's not about experiences. It's about how I relate to the people around me, to the things around me. It's not about what happens. It's about how I relate to what happens. It's my state of being, my state of consciousness. That's primary. And so that's, sometimes I joke with people. Someone says, I'm an interior designer. I say, so am I. I'm an interior designer. It's
That's
about
great.
designing, I don't know if you can design it, but nevertheless, the idea that, what are you thinking? What's your attitude? What's your way of looking at it? So that kind of, again, I think I'm somehow in my own flow of thoughts today. Am I answering your question or am I just going off?
You're absolutely answering the questions. And at one point in your time in the monasteries, it doesn't feel like a fit anymore. There's something inside of you that begins to shift.
Yeah.
What begins to happen there for you?
It's a very strange unfolding. Like there was definitely a point where I said, I cannot imagine not being a monk. I mean, this is it. Jonathan, literally, from the first days of going there, I felt I'd come home. I felt I finally have found my family. This is the real family. I belong here. When I put on the monk robes for the first time, I almost had tears in my eyes. This is the first time I feel I'm wearing correct clothes. I never felt these are correct clothes. Those monk robes felt like correct. The monastic chants, which most people take a few months to learn, I was learning them in 15, 20 minutes, some of the chants. Like, I'm able to memorize in 20 minutes, 30 minutes, stuff that people take weeks to memorize. It's just coming to me. So a sense of deja vu, a sense of I've done this before. I know this stuff, right? So I could not imagine leaving that setup ever, actually. So imagine my surprise where somewhere 3 or 4 years into it, the cracks begin appearing. And I begin to say that, this is my comfort zone.
Yes.
For many people, being a monk would be a discomfort zone, but actually, this is my comfort. It's easy for me to be a monk. I enjoy being a monk. And it's almost like I'm not challenging myself because relationships challenge me. Being by myself, doing my practice doesn't really challenge me. So somewhere the cracks began appearing. Also, Theravada Buddhism, which I was, the monastic tradition I was part of was Theravada, which is Southern Buddhism in Thailand and Sri Lanka. They do have very much of a goal-oriented model. So it's like, we're trying to get somewhere. We're trying to get to nirvana. We're trying to end our defilements. So it's about getting somewhere. And somewhere along the whole paradigm of trying to get somewhere, achieve something, that began to crack for me. Is it true that we have to get somewhere? Is it true that we have to, like I said, if desires are the problem, then even my desire for a particular state of being is a problem. My desire for nirvana is a problem. And how do I know I don't already have it? This thought came to me that if nirvana is the ultimate truth, then it has to be available now. Otherwise, it's a lie like every other lie. If nirvana is not available now, if it requires 30 years of practice or 30 lifetimes of practice, and developing these, like they have these 10 qualities in Theravada Buddhism, they call paramis or paramita. When the tank gets full, that's when it happens. Like, oh, if I have to develop something, if by cultivation I will arrive somewhere, then by lack of cultivation, I will also lose it. So the sense of it cannot be a conditioned state began to become more and more clear to me.
Mm.
And in different ways, one very clear example I remember, I was reading about a lady called Hanley Denning, who was a young lady from the US who'd gone to Guatemala. And she saw the kids in the garbage dump in Guatemala City. And she was so shaken to see these little kids who were looking for food and just, fooling around in the garbage dump that she said, no, I can't just not see, I can't unsee this. She used the money her parents had set aside for a college fund to start an organization in Guatemala called Safe Passage. And I read about this and I read about the kind of work she's doing. And something, again, I was actually in a cave at that time, living in a cave. And I began crying. And I said, my God, she's so brave. She's giving up her college education. She's going to a different country. She's working with someone. She has these kids, she has no reason to do this. And these are difficult kids. These are kids who often have substance, abuse issues, who are ADHD, who are, their parents have neglected them. They're traumatized in various ways. And something about that story it broke my heart open. I was crying. And I began to realize that maybe my journey is not just about like this whole thing of, I want to get it. I want to get enlightenment. It's also coming from a root of some kind of fear. Basically, I'm afraid. I'm afraid of my existence. I'm afraid of what's going to happen to me. If not in this life, then at death, what's going to happen to me? There's a fear behind that. So somewhere, all of these little experiences began to shift my priority. And I began to get open to the fact that maybe this lifetime is not about just secluding myself, focusing on my own practice. Maybe it's the analogy was from a lake to a roaring stream. The monastic life felt like a lake. It has these boundaries. It's very deep, very cool, soothing. The deeper you dive, the more treasures you get. A roaring stream, you don't know where it's going to go, left, right, up, down. Is it going to lose its way? But somehow I realized this lifetime is about being a roaring stream, and maybe not.
Yeah. How long did it take you to finally make the decision to walk away?
It took about the initial thought came somewhere in the fourth year, and it took another 1.5 to 2 years. But what I did was, I don't know where this wisdom came from. I didn't force it. I just gave it space. I actually said, I'm not going to decide. It's going to decide itself. I'm not going to make up decisions. Okay, I'm leaving. No. If it has to happen, it'll decide by itself. And it did. It actually did. It did. Life situations happened. I had to go to Malaysia for a bit. I had to come to India for a bit. I had to go to the US for a bit as a monk. I'm traveling everywhere without money. I didn't use money as a monk. So people were arranging tickets and all kinds of interesting things. Life is just organizing itself.
Yeah.
And somewhere early 2008, I think it was 2nd of Jan or something. And I woke up with a dream, a very clear dream, that this phase is over. There was no doubt. There was no second. I just woke up in the morning. Okay, this is over. Monk life is over. And there happened to be a monk from my tradition in my town that I was staying at that. And the interesting thing about Buddhism is it's hard to become a monk. It's easy to leave the monkhood. To leave the monkhood, all you got to do is tell a person who understands 3 times. I put down the training. I put down the training. I put down the training. And that's it. It's out, right? Most cults, it's easy to get in, hard to get out. With this particular cult, if you want to call it that, it's hard to get in. It's easy to get out.
Sure. And so you then leave monkhood with no material possessions, no money necessarily. How do you then begin building a new life from scratch?
Well, there were plenty of well-wishers. Someone bought me my first set of normal clothes. You're right. I had no money. I had zero money. I had no bank account. But my parents were there, so I was staying with them for a bit. I had decided I'll not take a job. I'll follow my joy. That's one thing I decided. So people would invite me. Can you do a half-day session for us? Can you do a one-day session for us? Can you share your experience? And they'd often make donations. Then someone said, can you do a session for my corporate team? Oh, how much do you charge? I said, I don't know what I charge. He said, okay, this is what I think we'll pay you. And then little by little, it kind of got upgraded, right? So I would charge 500 rupees for a one-on-one session, which I think in dollars is about $5 these days, 5 USD. And then a friend of mine said, what, you're charging $5? 10x, $50. I said, okay, we'll do $50. So suddenly some people who used to come to me stopped coming and new people began coming. Then a friend of mine said, there's a CEO who wants to do a session with you. How much do you charge? I said very proudly, $50. $50 an hour. He said, that's too little. He's not going to come to you. I said, how much should I charge? He said, you should charge at least $5,000. I said, all right, let's do $5,000. It went from $5 to $50 to, I think it was $500. And then later on, even I've charged $5,000 for some of my sessions. So the thing is, I began to realize it's not about the money. It's about where people perceive value and whatever their notions are. Sometimes if you charge too little, they'll think that you're not good enough.
Yes.
I used to accept all corporate invitations until I realized if I start with middle management, senior management doesn't want to do a session with me. This guy's the middle management trainer. But if I start with top management, then they're happy for me to work with any level. So I had to learn the ins and outs of this as I went along. It just kind of what do you say? It revealed itself.
Yeah. And what was the core of your teaching then?
The core of the teaching, I thought of as 3 things: deep listening, deep love, and deep silence. So you could think of it as deep listening in some way, not perfectly, but in some way maps out to witness. Can we be with each other, with this moment, with this experience, witness? Deep love, to really love is to not interfere. It's to witness your process and the other person's process. And deep silence goes beyond the subject-object duality. So it's itness. So witness, and itness.
Oh, great.
That was one way of expressing it.
Yeah. And how did these corporate folk respond to this teaching?
Somehow they were very receptive and open. Maybe it was the initial thing would be that I myself had done an MBA and worked for a short while. So to some extent, my languaging was not too heavily spiritual or philosophical. And I think I've always done this. I've tried to share from where I am and what I found seems to work for me. So there's no sense of trying to push. So you should do this or you need to do. There's no sense of pushing. There's a sense of, hey, these are a few things I discovered. And see if any of this makes sense to you. So I think most people, even the people who came in skeptical or came in resistant, they said, okay, but there is something here that I can apply in my life or with my kids, or, it makes me think about things. So most people have got something that they felt was of value from whatever interaction you had. It's very rare that I have of course, there are times when people feel that, okay, I'm coming from some Buddhist background. There are people There was once a person who refused to attend my session because he said, no, this is against my religion. I can't attend a session. So that happens. But once in a while, you'll have people who have a very strong mindset about things. And I don't think that's wrong either. I mean, why? Look, because I think one of the principles I like to follow, although I'm sure I fail at, is non-interference. Non-interference. One of the best gifts we can give each other is non-interference. One of my teachers used to say, to teach is a mistake. To not teach is a mistake. Which mistake are you going to make? Right? So I know when I'm teaching, I know I'm making a mistake, but I can't help it. I'm just built this way that I like to do that stuff. So you got to deal with it.
Yeah.
You don't want to interfere with your process, but inevitably there will be some interference. And that's all right.
And that's all right. Yeah. As you're entering deeper and deeper into the more material world and you're making money and you're engaging with people, you're out in the world, what was your internal experience in relationship to all of that?
Definitely, like especially if you're coming from a very extreme monk background, no handling money, no intimate relationships, not that connected to your family, at least on a daily basis. Definitely, it's a shift, and your programming has to shift. It took a while. I think it took at least a minimum of, I would say, 2 to 3 years to become more comfortable with the money part of things, asking for money, valuing my time, relationships. I was so surprised that, I used to practice loving kindness meditation as a monk, wishing happiness for all beings. But then in a relationship, it's so hard to love this one being.
Yeah.
It's easy. Like somebody said it nicely. I'm an Aquarian. Someone said Aquarians love humanity, but they can't stand humans.
That's so good.
So
Yeah.
I had that thing of, recognizing and mostly recognizing my own shadows, that how I can be so stubborn and I can be so stuck up and I can be so caught up in my wants and my needs and my desires. So it's been lovely. I can't say it's always been easy, but it's been very educational and continues to be. So many times I've seen myself get into, I think especially I would say 4 or 5 years ago, I think I got into it was verging on narcissism, I would say, such a strong sense of, I'm creating everything, it's like, it's all my dream. Then life gives feedback and says, not really. So it was a wonderful course correction, recognizing how one can exaggerate the sense of self and without really realizing it. A sense of I'm so powerful, I can create transformation, I can see through the veil, I'm here to help other people see through the veil. So that's why I like to say life is my teacher, more than any specific person or any specific teacher teaching. It's life itself. And life keeps me honest.
It does. And it gives you the curriculum as well. Like, hey, time to get out of the monastery, time to go into the real world. Let's go.
Amazing.
Yeah. How did you, so it must have been a matter of giving yourself permission of sorts when you were getting into the material world, meaning, permission to have material desires, permission to have sexual desires.
Yeah.
And that must have been, confusing at first. And like, what do I say yes to? What do I say no to? How do, almost like a getting to know yourself all over again, I imagine.
So true. We were just I have a little initiative I've begun called the Living Room, in which I invite people, 6 to 9 people, and we just chat. So today we were discussing contradictions within ourselves. Contradiction. And one thing that came out of that conversation is that it's not a problem to have contradiction. I mean, if you're honest, we are full of we're all bags of contradiction, if you're completely honest. That's not a problem. The problem is we would like to have we would like it all to be fitting into some identity we would like I want to be this peaceful, loving, wise, inspirational being, but I'm not. I can be lazy and I can be frustrated and I can be stubborn and I can be arrogant and I can be prideful and I can be all of that, but that's also it's the real problem is not the contradiction. It is the trying to fit it into some notion of how I am and how I need to be and how I ought to be. If we relax that notion, then life can unfold. So that's how it, I think it's been a process of continuously, you could say, either expanding or loosening or relaxing or dissolving
Mm.
the concepts I've had about myself
Over and over again.
over and over again, So
Yeah.
I can be very loving and forgiving. I can also be pretty, stubborn about things. And how fascinating, that's also a part of this. It's and, it's and, it's and.
Yeah.
I like to, one way I like to tell myself to explain all of this is God's high resolution dream. Can I let God have her dream? This is God's high resolution dream. God for me is grand overall design. The grand overall design. I don't know what it is, but here we are. And instead of let my will be done, let thy will be done. It is what it is. This always creates a sense of relaxation. I'm snapping back into the way things are as opposed to how I'd like them to be. So, yes, I mean, to answer your question, there were many, each of those things, sexuality and the whole, charging money, going from not even touching money as a monk to then charging money and even charging a lot of money and being flexible with it and charging less and sometimes not charging. And sometimes feeling that if I don't charge, then people are being very casual about it. And if I do charge, then people are calculating, are we getting our money's worth? So the whole game of it, right? The whole, and sometimes not charging, people are very open to you. Oh my God, you're so selfless and generous. People tend to be very open when you don't charge anything. And when you charge, then people can sometimes be calculating, but people can also show up. People will show up on time. If they paid for a session, they'll show up. They'll actually be there. I've spent money on this, right?
Yeah.
So just working with all of that, and no final answers, just being willing to lean into it is what I'd say.
Mm. Then you began teaching more and more online and going to doing more in speaking gigs. You did some TED Talks. You started your YouTube channel. What was it? What was happening inside of you there that was kind of wanting to be more vocal out in the world?
No, it was, in fact, from the very beginning, there was a desire to share this. It was quite a strong desire. The way I shifted, the way I conceptualized it for myself is from seeking happiness to spreading happiness.
Mm.
I had been focused, even the spiritual journey, the monk life had been about seeking happiness. But somewhere the shift happened from what can I get to what can I give? What do I bring? So initially, the concept very much was that I want to share what I've learned. I want to share some of the things that have helped me, some of the meditative practices, some of the emotional regulation practices, some of the principles I feel I've discovered. And I felt this is so precious, it's so valuable. I want to share this. So right away, in fact, maybe within a year of leaving my monk life, I discovered Facebook. And those days, it wasn't as common as it is now to use Facebook and social media to share ideas. Those days, a lot of people were sharing family photographs and what they're eating and that kind of stuff. So it was not that common to talk about ideas and share inspiring stuff. So very quickly, my Facebook kind of exploded, and I had many people following me there, and that led to all kinds of invitations. People would invite me all over the world and invite me to speaking gigs and invite me to their organization, invite me to their families. And very spontaneously, I just announced a session. I remember once I woke up in the morning with a dream saying that I had a dream of a 30-day retreat. Until then, I'd never done a 30-day retreat. I'd offered 5 days at the most, five. I think the 10 days was the longest I'd ever offered. And I woke up in the morning, 30-day retreat. So I put it on Facebook. I had a dream to offer a 30-day retreat. And within minutes, someone says, I've got a place where you can come. And somebody says, I want to join. And da-da-da-da-da. And the person who said, can you host it at he had a retreat center in the Himalayas. He said, I'm happy for you to do it in my place. I said, would you be willing to, just take care of the organizing bits? So I just directed everyone to him. And a few months later, we had a month-long retreat in the Himalayas. The power of social media, right? Just put a thought, and the crowd kind of made it happen. And we had some 25 people who spent a month with me in the mountains. We were above the clouds. It was so silent, Jonathan. The first day I went there, I said, do I have a problem with my ears? And and the person there said, no, this is not a problem with your ears. This is the sound of silence. You never hear in life. This is so silent. You're hearing the ringing you're hearing the blood flow in your ears.
Yeah, the sound of silence is so true.
So including the TED Talk, like I had seen some TED Talks, and the thought came, wouldn't it be nice to give a TED Talk? I just thought came, and I let it go. And literally within a week, someone attended one of my sessions and said, I'm organizing a TED event in so and so place. Would you like to be a speaker? And then and I think I've given at least 3 or 4 TED Talks since then. I'm invited to so many more. Nowadays, TEDx actually more than TED Talks. But the fascinating thing is that if it's like you might have noticed in your life, when you somehow get into the flow, then things just happen easily. Money comes easily, friends come easily, things happen easily. Kind of get into the flow of it for some time. Then, of course, life will give you a kick at some point.
Well, because what tends to happen is then the ego comes in and it wants credit. Like, look at all the I'm creating, all the things I'm doing, instead of realizing, no, it was you getting out of your own way that allowed for these things to actually transpire. Oh, that is so good. Yeah, yeah. And how did you find your teachings evolving over time? Because obviously they were evolving with you.
I think the center has remained pretty similar. The center has been things like we are already complete, whether we recognize it or not. What we are looking for, we already have. Who am I without my stories, my assumptions? What's it like to shift from my history into the mystery? I think the basic core has remained the same. Now, specific practices and the things like that can change, right? So I would sometimes focus more on reflective practices, sometimes more on meditation stuff, sometimes journaling stuff, sometimes more physical. I actually did a course, 21 days, where we did a kind of qigong kind of exercise every morning for 2 hours early in the morning. So there's a physical aspect to it. So like that would change. The outer format of how I'm expressing it would change. The inner core has remained more or less the same. The recent shift that I've seen is I've even been questioning that inner core, the assumptions I have about things like being and presence and silent mind. And I've realized that, hey, actually, even that's also a concept. That's not, it looks like that's non-conceptual, or we call unconditional. Actually, it's not. That's also conditional. That's also a concept. That's also based on memory. So at some level, that really, at one level, very disorienting because you thought you'd figured it out. But at another level, it's very freeing. Now you can play with all of that without getting caught up, without putting being as higher than becoming, for example, right? Without putting any one thing higher than anything else. When I'm angry, it's okay to be angry. I don't have to be peaceful. Even though my name is Nithya Shanti, I don't have to be peaceful all the time. I can be peaceful in my non-peacefulness.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So do you find that it is in the naming of the concept that it creates automatically the separation of that which it's here? It's what it's ultimately pointing to, and naming it creates the sort of conceptual.
We say spell, right? In English, we say spell. When you spell it out, you cast a spell. That's what naming does. The act of naming, like Judy Krishnamurti would say, when he'd point at a tree, he'd say, what's that? And someone would say, oh, that's a maple tree, or that's whatever, banyan tree. He'd say, right there, you missed it. Right now, you got memory. So the moment you said banyan tree or maple tree, you didn't see the tree. In that moment, you didn't see the tree.
Yeah.
So that's what naming does. It creates the sense of this hypnotic trance of I know. Actually, we don't know anything. One of my friends, Preeti Balan, she is a mindfulness coach. And she made us do an exercise where she just pick up anything. For example, I'll pick up this glass of water. And she'll say, what is this? I'll say, yeah, it's a glass of water. She said, yeah, but what is it? I'll say, yeah, this one's made out of glass and it has water. But what is it? So you keep asking, but what is it? And maybe I can say, okay, glass is made out of silicon or whatever. I can keep going. I can say a few more things, but at some point, my knowledge will come to an end. And I'll have to admit, I have no idea what this is. And that can be with anything, right?
Yeah.
That can be with anything. Byron Katie had a nice way of saying it. She says, no two people have ever met. You're like, what are you talking about? No, you've never met. You've only met your thoughts about them. Oh, so I've never met my mother. I've only met my thoughts about my mother. I've never met myself. I've only met my thoughts about myself. I've never met myself. I've never met life. So then, for me, the way it crystallized is to meet Jonathan without my stories, or at least questioning my stories. That's really meeting Jonathan, to whatever extent that's possible. I have to meet you. To meet you, I have to disregard everything I think I know about you. Otherwise, I'm not meeting you. I'm just meeting my projections of you. and how hard that is. Because it's the moment I look at you, automatically I have some sense of affinity or some sense of liking or whatever it is, or disliking, whatever, and that's in front. So just and not to fight it. It's okay. That's there, and right. And same with myself. When I look in the mirror, am I looking at myself or am I judging whatever aspect of myself? And life. So meeting the other without stories is love. Maybe meeting myself without stories, could say, is silence or meditation. Meeting life without stories. And now we're actually alive. Otherwise, we're just playing the tape. We're not really there. We're on autopilot.
And you think about decades that people go through therapy, that go through coaching, that go through healing work, that go through being a monk. And in a sense, all we're doing is trying to update our conceptual understanding of ourselves and change the story that has sort of lodged itself in a way in our psyche, when in reality, what is the ultimate pointing is we are here, we are whole, we are complete here now, if we are able to stay quiet. But then we play in the material. And that is also the paradox, because even as a teacher, the paradox in all that you're sharing is that we must then use words and concepts to point to that which is beyond words and concepts.
The finger, the Japanese call it the fingers pointing to the moon. There are 10 people pointing a finger at the moon. And then we go and select which is our favorite finger. And we all miss the moon without being pointed to the moon.
Yeah. And that's where I've come to as well, is that it's so funny. You get to a place where things matter and they don't matter. Everything is simply is, and things are just unfolding the way they're unfolding. And we try to insert ourselves in this process and sort of, create stories and create meaning and create direction and create purpose and fine. That's all fine too. Because that is also the play. So that is also the dance.
One thing I've learned to trust is when there's enthusiasm, there is time when there's a lot of enthusiasm. I feel like sharing something, creating something, writing something, recording something, offering something. And it happens. And it takes some shape, and whoever has to get something out of that, they get it. And of course, I get something out of that. There's some energy that builds up. And I've also learned to trust the phases where nothing much is coming. Like, I don't feel like reading. I don't feel like teaching. Don't feel like talking that much, interacting that much. And there's more silence. I don't know if there's silence or there's just a sense of, it's okay. Like, there's not being pulled in any particular direction. Eckhart Tolle said it nicely once. He said, acceptance, enjoyment, and enthusiasm. He said these are the brackets. Acceptance, middle is enjoyment, and then you have enthusiasm. So these are 3 markers of presence. In other words, we can't always be enthusiastic, right? We will sometimes be enthusiastic. We'll sometimes be in acceptance. It is what it is. And enjoyment is just like wherever you go, like there's some juice flowing, but there's no sense of having to project it out into the world. So can we trust that it'll not always be enthusiasm? Sometimes I just, and I've noticed in my so-called teaching career, almost every year, whether it's a few weeks or a few months, sometimes even as long as 8-10 months, just stepping back from all activity, the teacher role or whatever, coaching, anything, like just stepping back. And it takes, one thing that happened when I came on Facebook, it was a simple thing, but it really impacted me. That showed me to trust. I just began sharing stuff on Facebook. And within a few months, a man from Germany contacted me and said, can I have your bank account details? I said, why? He said, I love what you're doing. I want to contribute something every month. So I didn't know him, never met him. And he just began contributing $1,000 to my bank account every single month. And he kept doing it for many years. And it was like, I didn't ask for it, but definitely $1,000 in India, that kind of expands. So it's more, goes a further way. And it's just like amazing that, if you just trust, you don't have to push it. I like to say it this way. we will always be supported in the nick of time. In the nick of time, in the sense that you'll not always be able to guess what's coming when it's coming, but in the nick of time. That's surrender. That's trust.
Yeah. If
And if
there's
it's
one,
not meant to work out, it'll not work out. It's fine.
it's so,
That's also fine.
it's so true. If there's one teaching, and if anybody that has listened to this podcast has heard me say many times, so many times in my own life, so many times in those that I've supported, have we found ourselves at this sort of abyss of, kind of my analogy is I'm in a car going 90 miles per hour with the brakes out, not knowing if there's, if there's road anymore. It's just a cliff that I see ahead of, and my nervous system no longer reacts to that concept, even if a part of my mind feels like that's what's happening,
Yeah.
because I've experienced over and over again in my life and others' lives as well that I've supported, how life shows up every single time in incredible ways. Even for those that aren't deeply connected to themselves, even for those that are kicking and screaming and yelling and oh my God, the sky is falling. Incredible things transpire every single time. So that tells me a lot. That shows me a lot. And I really, every single time that happens, whether in my life or somebody else, I really take a moment to let it digest and be inside of me, so that it reminds me, it connects me deeper with life and that which
Beautiful.
we're ultimately connected to.
Well said.
Where
I
do
just
you
wrote
find?
before we began our call, this thought came to me. Trusting our process usually involves mistrusting our ideas of the process, our ideas about the process.
Yes. Yes. What does that mean to you?
It means that whatever notion I may have about how it's supposed to unfold, what's supposed to come up next, how I'm supposed to be in the middle of that, can I relax around that? Can I relax around, whatever concepts I have around how it's going to be?
Mm.
Again and again, life surprises us. I mean, what's that nice? I read this lovely quote the other day. I feel like reading it out to you. It turns out that it is possible to have a universe inside you over which you have no agency. It turns out that it is possible to have a universe inside you over which you have no agency except the option of noticing it.
It's incredible. The journey is quite interesting for people, because in some regard, the human mind starts off in victim mindset in terms of powerlessness. I have no power, and so that I have no control. But it's coming from a place of deficit, and then one transitions into I can create, I can do, I can make, and so there's an empowerment. But it's
Yes.
interesting how it comes full circle to eventually, like, I have no power, I have no control.
Yeah.
But it's
So
coming from an altogether different place.
I think I came up with something for that. So life happens to me. That's the victim state. Life happens to me. Life happens by me. This is the sense of creator, the sense of I'm empowered. Life happens by me. Life happens through me. More a sense of getting out of the way, channel. Life happens through me.
And then the final stage,
Life just happens, or
life happens as me.
as me. Yes, as me,
Yeah.
me, and then it happens, and then maybe even nothing happens. Nothing ever happens.
And it's just life. It's just life. Yeah.
And I think most people who are listening to this will also find the stages in their life where it felt it's happening to me. I'm a victim of my parents and the circumstances and what happened to me in the traumatic incident. Life happened to me, then life happening by me. At some point we gathered ourselves up and said, no, that doesn't have to define me. I'm gonna decide what's important. And actually, it's quite empowering. We actually feel that we can so-called create our reality, and we can achieve our dreams. And then we start judging those who haven't done. Come on, pick yourself up. You can do. But then at some point you realize that, yes, I can get what I want, but do I know what I want? Or have I just borrowed these notions? then let thy will be done, not mine. Let thy will be done, not mine. And then what is this thy will and my will? Where is the dividing line between thy will and mine? So now it gets more and more mysterious. What is happening? What needs to happen? I think that's the process of surrender, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. 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 The ultimate practice, letting go. Letting go. Yeah. What do you sense is emerging for you these days as far as the teachings and the teacher go?
I completed a 1-year course called Course in Blessings with some people in my community. So at 1 year, we were meeting about once a week and practicing together. And then this year I felt I want to be less in teacher mode and more in honoring the emergence. So I've come up with a new offering called Life as Practice. So it's less of a course and more of a basket of opportunities through which people can connect. So I was mentioning something called the living room. So, people come together and there's no strong sense of, who's facilitating it or what we're trying to achieve. It's just a gentle sense of, okay, I can give a few gentle guidelines, like maybe the first time you speak, share your name, or, be aware that there are other people in the room as well. So no one's going to tell you to stop talking, but be aware there are a few other people. And maybe just to get started, a little nudge of a topic. For example, the other day I gave the topic, thoughts and feelings. Should we trust them? And that's just a nudge, right? We don't have to stick to that, but that just gets people going. So that's beautiful, because now it's not like I'm, in the teaching mode. It's like, okay, and once in a while I'll share a reflection, but it's all of us together. And also once in a while, a morning practice, which I lead. Or I've come up with something called success teams, where we share a dream and we also share an obstacle to achieving that dream. And there's something about the human mind. The moment you share your dream and an obstacle, then we say, okay, how can I help this guy? You've got an obstacle. And we all start thinking together, right? So these are some ideas I have. And the way I do it is I just follow what's feeling juicy. Where is the enthusiasm? So these are things that I'm currently somewhat enthusiastic about. So I put them out there. And it's taking shape quite nicely.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Where do you cultivate your community currently?
Sorry?
Where do you cultivate your community currently? So how do people find out about your offerings, the things that you're doing?
I don't cultivate. There was a time when I've actually gotten off pretty much all social media. I was at, like I said, one point very active on Facebook, then Instagram. And, but at some level I found that one is becoming part of that entire, it's actually a thought system, that it's a thought system. And yes, it's rewarding in some ways. You meet a lot of people, they'll find you, but it also drains you in many ways. Added to that, slightly ADHD, right? So then there's a tendency to get into all of the other things that are being offered there and happening there. That there can be a tendency to compare yourself. There can be a tendency to try to project, I have to have a certain level of video quality, and it has to look a certain way, professional or whatever. So it at some level, it's very hard for it to not become just trying to project a certain image of yourself. So a couple of 2 or 3 years back, I actually came out of Facebook, came out of Instagram, hardly even posting on YouTube or LinkedIn. So I'm not cultivating my community. So it's pretty much people who already know me, who are part of some of the WhatsApp groups I have. Once in a while, I'll share a newsletter with my mailing list. So yeah, people pretty much find me if they have to, and they're probably better off if they don't.
So, but practically, when you make an announcement about a new offering of sorts, it's a WhatsApp group.
I'll put it on my WhatsApp. I have a few WhatsApp groups. I think if I add up the people in my WhatsApp groups, it'll currently come to about 4,000-5,000 currently.
Quite
it's
significant.
It's a small kind of. I don't know if everybody on WhatsApp, I don't know how many people really see the messages that are posted. So maybe 20% of people will actually see the messages. Yeah. And so yes, at one level, when I was on Instagram and Facebook, my retreats would fill up a lot faster. My events it would be very quick, right? If I had a 30 people event, maybe in a few days it's filled up. Now maybe it takes 2 weeks to fill up.
Okay.
But is that a price I'm willing to pay? And the answer is yes. Yeah, beautiful. I'm willing to pay that price. I'm willing to Maybe there's a third path that I'm not. Maybe you can hire someone to take care of those things, and maybe there's another way to do it as well. I don't know, but for me,
Yeah.
this is okay. I'm okay to. There's a kind of contentment that's here, and there's a kind of trust that's here. That those who will be attracted to this. Usually, people come through word of mouth. Today's call, we had a call today, and at least two of them said, "This friend of mine, this sister of mine, this cousin of mine put me in touch with you." So then human beings have a tendency to share what is working for them, right? So then those who have to find me in that way organically will find.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. What inspired you to move from Pune, India to Oregon?
This may seem funny to some people, but I am very affected by air quality. It affects me in more than most things. Air quality really affects me. So at some level, it's got tired. I was mostly in India for some family responsibilities and things. So the moment that got a little resolved, I felt I'd like to be just in cleaner air. So I'm loving the air in Oregon. Deep breaths. But apart
Yeah.
from that, also I like. In the US, I'm not. People don't know me that much, so there's less of an identity of me as a teacher or me as someone who's been a monk or whatever. So I'm just a dude. I'm just a person, and it's nice to just interact with people who are not kind of looking up to you or projecting something onto you. That's also nice. So all of that, and also I just like it's nice to be in the US. Nice to go on long drives,
Beautiful.
hiking.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. As we begin wrapping up this conversation, for anybody that's listening, that's on their own journey of awakening, journey of transformation, whatever it may be, what advice, what thought, what can you leave them with that may help them on their own journey?
So we use the word journey. At the same time, the place we're trying to get to is actually here, isn't it? It's always here. So I like to say the journey is endless and the destination is here. And we will keep on, imagining I need to do this, achieve this, become this, learn this, unlearn this, improve this. And that's fine. That's part of it. But again and again, one will have to snap back into it is what it is. Here we are. One of my teachers would say, how do I know I need something? I have it. How do I know I don't need something? I don't have it. Want what you have. What's it like to want what you have and not want what you don't have? What is troubling you? You're wanting what you don't have. That's what's creating the journey, isn't it? You're wanting what you don't have. You're not wanting what you do have. That's what's creating the journey. And the Buddha once talked to one of his disciples. He said, how much longer? You've been on journey after journey. We go on outer journeys, we go on inner journeys. How much longer? How much more wandering? He said, if you want to go on a long journey, take a companion. Thirsty desire, thirsty desire. Next thing, next thing, next thing. Not good enough. Not there yet. Not there yet. If you want to go, Buddha says it'll take you the longest journey in the world. This after that, after that. But if you're done with the journeys, then say goodbye to that companion. Thirsty desire, endless desire. We'll have normal desires, but the sense of I'm not complete until, like I'll have a desire at some point to have lunch and all of that. That's fine. That's just natural. That's just normal stuff. But the moment we become, I'm not complete until I whatever give my TED talk or write my book or become have 1 million followers. That's something we may want to question. If it's time for us to question that. So that's what's coming. Yeah.
Nithya, it was such a pleasure having this conversation with you. You embody these deeper states of being, this deeper wisdom, and I really thank you for sharing it with me, sharing it with us, and for being the person that you are in this world.
Thank you, Jonathan. And thank you for creating these spaces for me and others to have these conversations. Even though we may be talking about these things, just to have a space where we can kind of look at our own process, it does create a synthesis creates an integration. So thank you for creating spaces like this.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us today. To learn more about today's guest, visit our podcast landing page at www.podcast.centerfortransformationalcoaching.com. You'll find links to their website, social media, and anything else they might want to share there. And if you're curious to explore more about our work, our trainings, or the deep coaching approach, you'll find everything at www.centerfortransformationalcoaching.com. A new episode of this podcast releases every 2 weeks, so please subscribe wherever you listen to stay up to date on each episode. Until next time, stay present, embrace love, and continue sensing into what life is calling you toward. See you soon.